Veteran homicide investigators all across the country have some very serious questions about the way local and federal authorities in Texas handled, or better said, mishandled, the death of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, with confirmation that he was found dead last Saturday morning with a pillow over his head and his clothes unwrinkled. Retired police detectives nationwide began to look into the case and then publicly expressed their concerns that the official investigation and handling of the case has thus far been a complete disaster and highly unusual. In fact, it was former head of criminal investigations for the D.C. police, William Ritchie, who told the Washington Post, "My gut tells me that there is something fishy going on in Texas." Well, you could say that again. And how's this for a botched investigation? You have a Supreme Court justice who died mysteriously on his bed in a far-off remote location, the Cibolo Ranch and Resort in Marfa, Texas. The owner of the ranch is Texas millionaire John Poindexter, shown here shaking hands with President Barack Obama. And that's because Poindexter is also a huge financial donor to the Democrats and a big-time Obama supporter. He also happened to be the first guy to discover the body there at the scene of Scalia's death. It was Poindexter who then called the local authorities. He told them that Scalia had died, and they officially declared that he was dead over the phone without an official medical examination. No autopsy was ordered for the Supreme Court justice. Presidio Judge Cinderella Guevara pronounced that Scalia had died of natural causes. The death certificate will say that he suffered a heart attack. Remember, there was no medical examination, but they're going to tell us that it was a heart attack. And there was also nobody there to examine the body who was trained in homicides. So nobody there to look around and see if there was any foul play involved. Very strange. I guess we're supposed to just take their word for it. Poindexter said that there's no doubt in his mind that there was no struggle and that Scalia died peacefully in his sleep. And you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe Scalia did die of a heart attack in his sleep. I mean, the guy was 79 years old, so it could have happened, right? But any reasonable law enforcement agency, they would have immediately set up a crime scene, and then they would have launched an investigation into his death. In fact, they broke Texas law by not following standard operating procedures.
I believe that in this day and time, with someone as important as a sitting justice on the Supreme Court, that you would have such a haphazard death investigation.
And that was former head of the Homicide Division in Washington, D.C., William Ritchie, with a big WTF thought bubble over his head. Look, Scalia held one of the most important positions in the world, and there's no doubt that he has some very powerful enemies. There needs to be an investigation, and they should have done an autopsy.
Upon hearing Scalia's death due to natural causes, most people brushed it off. He was 79 years old, but then the fumbling of the details began. Presidio County Judge Cinderella Guevara pronounced Scalia dead due to natural causes without seeing the body or even ordering an autopsy.
If you believe that, we ought to go back to monarchy, that the people are such sheep that they just swallow whatever they see on television or read in the newspapers.
And the highly decorated Vietnam veteran and prized Democratic Party donor and Cibolo Creek Ranch owner John Poindexter continually changed his story until he finally blurted out that Scalia was found with a pillow over his head and the sheets were unwrinkled. The Washington Post reports, quote, William O. Ritchie, a former commander and former head of criminal investigations for D.C. police, wrote, "You have a Supreme Court justice who died, not in attendance of a physician. You have a non-homicide trained U.S. Marshal tell the Justice of the Peace that no foul play was observed. You have a Justice of the Peace pronounce death while not being on the scene and without any medical training opining that the justice died of a heart attack? What medical proof exists of a myocardial infarction? Why not a cerebral hemorrhage? End quote. Any signs of strangulation uncovered by a mandatory standard autopsy, such as petechial hemorrhage, would have sounded off alarm bells. Yet an autopsy of one of the most powerful people in the United States was neglected. Meanwhile, towns like Falfurrias, Texas, shell out money they don't have to perform autopsies on illegal aliens. The meager funds that Brooks County accumulates from their property taxes and funds given to them by the state of Texas and not the federal government go here to bury undocumented migrants crossing illegally across the border just 60 miles south, a day's walk to their deaths of dehydration.
The effective tax rate cannot exceed 80 cents, and the effective tax rate at that time would have been 97 cents. So we had to reduce our budget by 17 cents because it cannot go over that, and that's by law. Compounded by the amount that we spend, and that figure is dealing with autopsies, it's dealing with the wear and tear of the vehicles, the sheriff department, the JPs, the magistrates, the death certificates, all the paperwork that's entailed, getting out to these areas that are very, very remote. I personally have been taken to pronounce a body when the sheriff officer with me says, "Oh, there went the transmission."
Currently, it may not appear that Scalia's suspicious end at a West Texas resort amounts to much to the average citizen, 32% of which have never even heard of him, according to a Gallup poll. But in the months to come, if all goes well for Obama by way of a corporocratic faux Republican majority in Congress and Obama's go-it-alone approach to the executive office, Scalia's death will be regarded as the final nail to be driven into the Federal Republic of the United States as Obama transforms the United States into a unitary republic, legally ruled by an all-powerful central government.
It's always suspicious when a judge at any level gets killed, because judges sit in a position where they make decisions that can destroy people's lives. And so they make a lot of enemies in the course of their work. But when you got a Supreme Court justice, this Supreme Court justice is deciding the life and death of entire industries. He's deciding the life and death of global agendas. Exactly. And as a matter of fact, he just had a decision like that a few days before he died.
And he said, no, we're not shutting down all the carbon plants. No, we're going to defend the Second Amendment. No, we're going to control the border. No, we're not going to let the TPP run everything. And they went, oh, really? You're dead.
Yeah, exactly. That is what is very suspicious, because you've got him being involved in something that is not only shutting the coal industry down, but that decision that they made to put a stay on Obama's EPA orders to take down the coal industry also had massive impacts on their whole climate change agenda. So that decision wasn't just of national importance, it was of international
importance. And the globalists, according to the Financial Times of London, have spent more than $60 billion the last 20 years pushing the global warming carbon tax bull. And he just shot it down. And so maybe it's just a message to the rest of the court. You do what you're told, or you're going to end up with a pillow over your head.
That's right. Scalia had some very powerful enemies. And if this was indeed a hit job, well, it certainly would send a powerful message to anyone standing in the way of the globalist agenda. Perhaps Scalia felt as if he was one of the untouchables.
What can he do to me? Or to any of us? We have life tenure, and we have it precisely so that we will not be influenced by politics, by threats from anybody.
What the hell is this?
It's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
And it gets even more suspicious when the people out there in Presidio County won't talk to anybody, when the people in charge of the case refuse to answer questions, when they don't participate in interviews, and when they turn their backs on our cameras. Tell you what, something strange is going on out there. To me, this looks like a cover-up.
I wanted to speak to Judge Obama. My name is David Knight.
All right. In regards to?
I just had a quick question. Are you with the Sheriff's Office?
No, I'm City County Council.
Oh, okay. Hi, Judge.
Hello.
I had a quick question. We're with the press. My name is David Knight. I had a couple of questions going back and forth between the sheriff. I wasn't really clear how the federal marshals were involved, because the press reports that I've seen are conversations back and forth between you and the sheriff, but I was trying to tie down a timeline as to who was involved at what point, who made the decisions not to do the autopsy. Was that something the federal marshals were involved in? Or?
I've given a statement to the Big Bend Sentinel, and you'll have to go to them. They have my official statements.
So they're your spokesman? Because this is a story of national importance.
I'm busy right now, so if you'd like to get that.
I understand. This is a story of national importance, and
yes.
There's a lot of people who are very concerned that procedures were not followed. And they want to know who was making that decision. Was that something the sheriff was doing, or is it something the federal marshals were doing? Is it something you were doing?
Procedure was followed, and they have my statement.
Okay. Thank you. Here you see, she doesn't want to talk about what's happened here, and we understand why. This is usual procedure. You've got a judge who, over the phone, pronounces the Supreme Court justice dead. We don't need to see anything. It's all done. You had two judges who passed this on because they couldn't physically go. She doesn't think it's important enough to go. She says, we can talk to the local paper. I don't know if that's a livestock paper or what it is, to get their statements. She's given them a statement. She's not going to talk to anyone else except the local paper. I wonder what their relationship is. But she doesn't have a relationship with us. She doesn't want us to ask her any questions. That's what this is all about.
Meanwhile, InfoWars reporter Joe Biggs, also on the scene investigating all this. Well, he talked to a former deputy from the area, and he says that the way local authorities handled the Scalia case was very irregular.
So why do you think this the ball was dropped, so to say, in dealing with Justice Scalia? You know, there was a body in a room at the Cebolla Creek Ranch. No one was there when this happened, from what we've been told. Someone walks in, they see this guy laying there with a pillow over his face, over his head, however you want to put it. And the sheriff initially comes in, they call a few judges, no one can make it out. They contact the judge here, and she does an over-the-phone thing. Now, what would have you done differently?
Again, I would have quarantined the area, started gathering the bed sheets, the pillows, everything that was there as evidence to get sent off to the labs for testing. And I would have requested the judge to give me an autopsy.
See, so this is the situation we have. You have a case where an illegal alien comes across the border. It's mandatory standard operating procedure for them to cordon off that area, gather evidence, submit that evidence, and then get a request or contact and try to get an autopsy done. And then we have this man, Antonin Scalia, who is a Supreme Court justice who was found dead at a ranch known to hold celebrities, and this is not done. This is extremely irregular.
Yes, I would have to say it is very irregular.
Well, thank you for your time. Like you said, I mean, hopefully if you can win this race, you can become sheriff, you can make sure that these kind of situations and scenarios will be dealt with properly.
And one thing you can always count on in a situation like this, especially if there is indeed a cover-up, and that is full cooperation and assistance from the mainstream media. Ever since we got details of Scalia's death and started asking common sense questions, well, it didn't take long for the establishment media to go into full attack mode, and they started killing the messenger, so to speak. And of course, they are calling us the C word again, conspiracy theorists. In fact, if you do a Google search and type in Justice Scalia conspiracy theories, well, you are going to get a ton of results with our name on it. InfoWars, and of course, Alex Jones, who the Washington Post says is the vector of universal conspiracy theories. They are trying to discredit and ridicule anyone who dares to question the official narrative of the bizarre and strange circumstances surrounding the death of Justice Scalia. See there, they even put us alongside space aliens and a group of wackos who think that Leonard Nimoy faked his death to join the Illuminati and kill Obama. I guess we're supposed to be with that group so you won't take us serious. It is guilt by association. And I know you're not going to fall for it. For the most part, I'm preaching to the choir here. Our audience is very intelligent and wide awake. But unfortunately, there's still lots of people out there who are gullible enough to believe in these hit pieces. I guess you could say they are very naive.